Here we go, and we are live. Hi everyone, great to see you, and thank you for joining this Winning the Game of Business Live. Now, when people ask me, Kev, what do you do? My favourite answer is as little as possible. And I nearly always get the same reaction to that. You know, it might be a little bit of a laugh, then a slight tilt of the head, then the curiosity followed by, what do you mean? And I think people have a challenge computing that because most people still treat being busy as a badge of honour. We've all been trained from a young age to do that. Doing nothing looks wrong. So think back to when we were at school. If you're sitting there quietly daydreaming and the teacher says, what are you doing? Get on with your work. Or it could be that you're in work and you're scrolling your phone or doing some thinking and your boss walks past. And the automatic reaction might be to flick back to a spreadsheet that makes you look busy. Now, it's fair to say that we've all been pre-programmed to look busy. But here's the uncomfortable truth. As a business owner, the last thing you should want to be is busy. Now, let's see if any of this sounds familiar. You might find yourself saying, there's just not enough hours in the day. Or you could get to the end of your day and think, I've been flat out, but I don't know what I've actually achieved. Or maybe you're doing the quotes and the invoices after dinner, or in your business, there's always a million things to do, and you seem to be the person that's doing most of them. Now, those are all signs that you haven't learned to free up your time, which leads nicely into today's discussion, which is all about delegation. Because if you want to actually build a business and not just own a frantic job, then you've got to get really good at delegation. And here's the excuse I hear most in business. I'm not getting things done because I don't have enough time. Nope. We've all got exactly the same hours. The difference isn't time, it's how we use that time. So the real question is, are you still doing things that you shouldn't be doing? Things that someone else or a system or a tool could be doing instead. And if you really want to master building a business, then you must master delegation, not as a nice to have, but as a non-negotiable skill. Now, before I became a coach, I had hospitality businesses. I had multiple venues, which included 4 restaurants. Now, here's the great thing that I did have going for me. I wasn't a chef. And that meant there was literally no version of reality where I could jump into the kitchen and cook over 400 covers on a Saturday night. So I had to hire chefs. There was no option of I'll just do it myself. If you think about it, that's delegation in its purest form. There's too much work for one person. The work needed a skill set, which I didn't have. And that forced me into bringing in people to do it, people with that skill set. And that then allowed me to focus on building and running a successful business. But here's where I fell into the same trap that everyone else does. I still spent way too much time doing things below my pay grade. So I was good at systemizing and improving service. That's my background. That's where I add real value to the business. But I still got sucked into day-to-day things because it was a habit. That's what I see in so many business owners. They're doing things way below their value, way below their pay grade, purely because they've always done them. So let me give you a practical example from a client. So we did an exercise on his email, and he was estimating that he was spending around 5 hours a week just sorting out his inbox, deleting junk, skimming things, deciding what to ignore. It's fair to say he was being busy in email. We then looked at, if he was to spend those 5 hours doing his highest value work, only he could do, how much would he generate per hour? And when we did the maths and we then extrapolated that out, the answer was a jaw-dropping £125,000 a year. £125,000 a year in missed opportunity. It's not £125,000 lost from his bank account, but £125,000 he could have been creating if he wasn't sat faffing around on his emails. And here's the kicker. Most of that sorting could be done by the email program itself. The email program's got filters, it's got rules, it's got folders. Or nowadays, we're really lucky because you can get plugins, AI plugins for that. Plugins that can read, they can summarize, they can prioritize, and they can even suggest replies to emails. So he was essentially paying himself the MD, the business salary of an MD, to do work a basic system could do. And this is really, really common. And what most business owners miss is the pain isn't visible. You don't see the £125,000 that you didn't make, so it doesn't feel urgent. And as humans, we move away from pain faster than we move towards opportunity. And that opportunity cost doesn't hurt until you actually see it. So we know this logically, so why don't we just delegate everything and sit on the beach? Well, a few good reasons are, first, identity and habit. You've always done it. You're used to being the fixer and you're proud of being busy. Secondly, there's fear. Definitely one of my big problems. No one will do it as well as me. What if they mess up? What if they drop the ball and I look stupid? And then we have overwhelm. The thought of systemizing everything feels huge, so you never start. And also there's often a lack of clarity. You don't actually know how you do what you do. You just do it. You do it on autopilot. You do it on autopilot while you're multitasking. And that means when you sit down to document a system and think, okay, what are the steps? You suddenly realize you've never actually broken it down before. And it's a bit time consuming, getting it out of your head onto paper. And this is why so many owners say they want to delegate, but they never quite get round to it. Itchy nose, sorry. Now, before we move on, let's get clear about something. Delegation is not abdication. Delegation is not abdication. So abdication is where you go, hey, take this off me, I never want to see it again, good luck. But that's how you end up disappointed, resentful, and saying, see, this is why I do everything myself. And the truth is, delegation is a process. It's a process where you keep ownership of the tasks and you build a system around the person and then monitor, coach, and adjust. And you can delegate to a person, you could delegate to a system, you can delegate to a tool, you could delegate to AI, or a combination of all those things. But it's still leadership, it needs intention. So let's get practical now. So here are 4 steps to delegating really well. First, you need to make the decision. Decide, I'm not going to be the source of all knowledge and all the doing in this business. And that means accepting risk. Yes, someone might make a mistake. Yes, something might get dropped. That's business. But decide what's one thing, just one task that you're going to delegate this week. The second step is to do a pre-test. And that involves you asking 2 questions. What's the worst realistic thing that could happen if I delegate this? And can I live with that or put safeguards in place? So if the worst is we might have to redo a piece of work, you might be able to live with that. If the worst is we could lose our biggest client, okay, maybe you need to start a little bit smaller. Then compare. What is the cost of delegating versus the cost of not delegating? Look at your hourly rate or your hourly value versus the hourly cost of someone else doing it. Now, if you're effectively worth £300 an hour, you might not be paying yourself £300 an hour, but you may be able to generate £300 an hour in business, and you're doing £20 an hour tasks, and you already know the answer. Now, the third step is to follow a process. Good delegation includes things like clear policies or guidelines, skills and training, responsibility. This is yours. It also includes authority. You're allowed to make X, Y, and Z decisions. It's got a time frame. Here's when it needs to be done by. And it's got really clear outcomes. This is what great or good looks like. And importantly, it has some form of speedy feedback process, which could be as simple as, here's what worked, here's what to improve. Now, you don't need a 50-page manual for everything. Sometimes a simple 5 to 10 step checklist is enough. But if you just chuck it at someone and hope, that's not delegation. That's abdication in design, in disguise. So we put your teeth in, Kev. And the fourth step is to keep control without micromanaging. And you keep control through two levels. Level one is look at the options they recommend and a decision, and then you approve it before action is taken. So you get them to look at the options, they recommend a decision, and then you approve it before it's taken. The second level is they look at the options, they make the decision, they take the action, and then they report back the result. What you'll find is as your trust grows, you'll find you're going to move more tasks to level two, so that you're not hovering anymore, you're building capability in your people. Let's just zoom out a second to the highest level of delegation you're ever likely to do in your business. And that's handing it over to a general manager. Now, that's you saying, I'm not going to run the day-to-day anymore, I'm going to own the business. Now, most owners are currently doing three jobs. They've got the owner's job, the general manager's job, and the operation role, which could be something like sales, delivery, crunching the numbers. It's no wonder actually that we're always exhausted, but separating those roles is hard, especially the general manager versus the owner role, because you're so used to doing both and you never actually define what an owner actually does. And it's often because you're emotionally attached to, it's my baby. And that's why promoting someone internally can be tricky, especially if they've only ever seen you blend all three roles together. And in some cases, you're better off hiring a general manager from the outside, someone who's already been a GM in another business, because they know what a GM role is. And then your job is to set the outcomes, the sales, the profit, the team, the customers, efficiency, innovation, things like that. Give them the tools and the systems, then get out of the way and let them get on with it. But stay in control through clear reporting. And then don't freak out if they're not busy all the time. You're not paying them to look busy. You're paying them for outcomes. If they can hit the numbers and keep the business humming along in 20 hours a week instead of 60, fantastic. That's the dream. Now remember, delegation isn't always to a human being either. You can delegate to email rules. You can delegate to a Trello or a project tool. You can delegate to automations and AI tools like ChatGPT. Now, one of the biggest silent killers for owners is decision fatigue. By 3 p.m. on a day-to-day basis, you made so many decisions, the next one just feels a bit too heavy. And that's why holidays feel so good, because there's fewer decisions to make. So use systems to hold your ideas, your tasks, and your priorities. Dump ideas into something like Trello instead of carrying them around in your head. Or ask AI to prioritize or estimate the time needed for your tasks. You can also get your team to come up with solutions, not just problems, because the question, what would you do, is a really powerful question. And that's delegation too, because you're delegating thinking, not just doing. Okay, let's bring this all together. If you're busy, if you're always flat out, you're always doing a million things, That's a sign that you're not a hero. It's a sign you're still operating like the general manager of your own chaos instead of the owner of a proper business. So here's my challenge to you. Pick one thing you're going to delegate this week. Now, that could be an email triage, it could be bookkeeping, it could be diary management, social media, a simple process, or one recurring task. Then run it through the 4 steps. Make a decision, do the pre-test, follow a process, and keep control. Also, start noticing where you're doing work way below your pay grade. And every time you catch yourself, ask who or what could be doing this instead of me. And if you do this consistently, you'll buy back hours, then days, then weeks of your time. That's when you stop being busy in your business and start being a business owner. Now, if you want help spotting what to delegate first or how to structure your business so it actually runs without you, drop a comment or send me a message. But until next time, stop wearing busy as a badge of honor. Delegate like an owner and keep winning this great game of business.